Good. Oh, I thought I was in a bigger frame. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, or good night, or whatever time it is where you are watching this. It's the Senior Synth stream, which the name is only a joke, but it hung on for a few years. So now it is the Senior Synth stream, and we are getting older. So today it's about the Leviasynth from ASM, because many people don't know what the Leviasynth actually is, and one of those people is me. I would love to know more about it, so I decided we will do a stream about it. So we do have a few people who know some things. One of them that knows nothing, almost nothing, is Andy. And Andy, you are here. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I'm here to get educated, so.
Yeah, the same here.
Ken gave me a really good demo on the NAMM show floor. If you look on my channel, he does a nice deep dive at one point, which is really cool. So I learned a lot from that. But other than that, I barely had a chance to touch it or play it or even read much about it. So I'm happy to be here to learn along with everybody else.
Yeah, and we are the two people who knows almost nothing. So here's Ken. You know everything. Oh.
I know some things. I definitely don't know everything, but I know some
okay.
things.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we have people to support you. We do have Manny, who knows almost everything. Or do you know everything?
I know nothing. Colonel Hogan.
You know nothing.
Schultz.
You know
Come
nothing.
on.
Okay. But again, we have people to support you. So Scott, you know a lot.
I don't remember. Was I there? I have no memory of Epstein.
Okay. Then we have one more, and that's Jonathan Tremblay.
Hello, everybody. I might know a thing or two, not too much.
Good, but you have a nice wall. We can't
Yes,
see
I
the
do.
wall
I
here.
do. It brightens up your screen at night if you're watching this later.
Yeah. So these are the people on the stream today. So let's get started. For someone who tries to understand what the Leviasynth is, who gave up on a loop-up stream and other streams because it looks like a synthesizer, but there's a lot of talk about what it does. Ken, what is a Leviasynth? Take it part by part.
Well, I'll try to break it down as basically as possible here. Essentially what it is it's an 8-oscillator, 16-voice synthesizer, and we use the term algorithmic synth. And the reason we use the term algorithmic synth is because you can arrange your oscillators in different algorithms. I'll show you this here. So the algorithms you would look at and you might think, oh, it's just an FM synthesizer, but it's not. So what is interesting about the way that we do this is the oscillators can be, different wave shapes, and they all have their own envelopes, and basically they all have their own VCA inside of them, right? But you can also set each oscillator to a mode, right? Which is right here. And these modes can be anything from phase modulation, which would be FM as in, like a DX7 sort of thing, frequency modulation, and then you have pulse width modulation, HTE sync, and then you've got different modes of phase distortion in here, okay? So what's interesting about how we go about this is these algorithms, you can have different modes inside of a single algorithm. So you could have, for instance, oscillator 5 here could be phase modulation on oscillator 1 and 2, right? But oscillator 7 could be pulse width modulating oscillator 5, or you could have oscillator 7, phase distorting oscillator 5. So you can combine different synthesis methods inside of a single algorithm. And because of that, you can do some really interesting things, very unique sounds, and it just lets you really kind of explore sound in different ways. All of that then goes through the digital filter section that was in the Hydrasynth, right? So all of the digital filters, both filter 1 and 2, all of those modes are from Hydrasynth are in this. And then from there, it goes through an analog filter stage. And as it goes to that analog filter stage, let me show you this. So you have this VCA screen, and as it passes into there, we have this pre-drive. Now, the pre-drive is our own gain staging circuit that allows us to push into the filter dynamically and really allows you to get saturation from the filter in a very interesting way. So you can take, again, we're talking about 8 oscillators, right? You could have a single oscillator patch, right, with one voice, one oscillator, a sine wave, and with this VCA page here and the analog filter page here, you can increase the pre-drive so much that you could have a single sine wave saturating the filter completely, fully driving it and clipping it out through the analog circuit and getting that analog distortion and saturation happening, all the way to obviously you can have that crystal clean as well, to having 8 oscillators with complex harmonics, saw waves and multiple. We've got over 300 different waveforms in here, so you could have a complex shape oscillator that's going to have a whole lot going on in it. 8 of them going into the digital filter, which then has self oscillation as well, and digital drive as well, going into the analog filter completely clean, or jack that that pre-drive up and then saturate that as well. So the gain staging has been very, very meticulously done to make sure that you have a lot of character in the analog section here. And interestingly, when we did the analog filter side of it, we wanted the self-oscillation of the analog filter to be really unique and powerful. Like, we wanted to kind of get that, how, like, if you have a really, really great monosynth, monosynths excel at, you can have a ton of filter power there, saturation and analog self-oscillation of the filter, and you get all this great sound. And usually in a polysynth, you have to dial that way back because it just doesn't work polyphonically well. Like, it doesn't gain stage well, and things can break up in ways that aren't as pleasant, and it just kind of can destroy patches, that sort of thing. But we wanted to give the Leviasynth the ability to have that monosynth sound and that monosynth gain staging if you want to do that, but also give you the flexibility of being perfectly clean, because taking the phase modulation as an example, if you do a complex phase modulated patch and then you distort it, you can completely ruin that patch. Like, it can really cause a lot of problems in a patch if you need it to be clean and you're not getting it clean. So it was really important to have both sides of the coin here, of being able to go ultra clean or go ultra dirty and raw and just angry and all that stuff. So in addition to, if you're familiar with ASM and you're familiar with the Hydrasynth, you're familiar with our PolyTouch Keybed with the aftertouch. So you have polyphonic aftertouch. You've got a full-length ribbon controller on the unit. And then we've got our arpeggiator. We've got a sequencer. And we've got the wonderful module select area, so that instead of having to dig through a modulation matrix of like, oh, let me spreadsheet this patch out and, do every little modulation set up on basically a spreadsheet. Here, it's all about tactile response. So you basically, you press a source and you press a destination, and it makes that connection for you. So it's all about ease of workflow and not, you know, you've got this really, really deep synthesizer, but what you don't want is to have people, you know, have it take forever just to make a decent patch on it. We want you to be able to make patches really fast. So a lot of that is borrowed over from the Hydrasynth, because the Hydrasynth is also an extremely deep synthesizer. But we wanted to make it so that, you know, okay, it doesn't feel crazy menu divey. And if you did it knob per function, you'd have a gazillion knobs, and that would actually be more difficult than what we've done. So it's really about giving a workflow that's easy to use. And part of that is the envelope, the oscillator envelope level and bias controls here. So what we allow you to do is things like, if I were to take a kind of FM style patch for just a second here, and let me, I'm going to adjust my audio settings for just a second so that you can actually hear this correctly. So if I have this patch, right, and you wanted to just make it percussive and short, here I can just turn this envelope bias, and what you'll see on the screen here, these are also touch sensitive knobs, right? They're capacitive. So if I just touch a knob, for instance, if I just touch the attack, you'll see it's showing a 0 attack bias right now, right? If I touch the decay, I've biased it negative, right? So now, and I'm going to do the same for my release, right? I'm just taking it way back here. Now, if I bring that release up a bit and that decay up a bit, right? And if I bring it way up, and let's say I want to turn it into a pad, so I just turn the attack up here.
And just to be clear, Ken, you are adjusting the bias of the individual envelopes on each of the 8 oscillators. This is not touching the ADSR that comes after that.
So what that's doing here is all of these 8 oscillators have their own envelopes inside of them. And what that looks like is if I go into the oscillator on the second page of the oscillator, you'll see the envelope for each oscillator. And I can hold shift and touch another oscillator and be on the same page so you can see this, right? Now, if I want to have control over all of this at once, I can use that bias control, or also what I can do is, let me show you this. So this section here is group edit. And what that means is that this is all of the oscillators on one screen in that section of the oscillator, right? So for instance, if I touch attack right now and you look at the screen, now you can see all of these positions right here, all 8 of these knobs are for the attack stage of each oscillator. So this is oscillator 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So I can adjust individually any section of my oscillators. For instance, if I want to change the wave shape of each oscillator, I can do that. I just touch the wave button, and now I can see we're using sine waves on all these oscillators. Let's say for oscillator 2, I wanted it to be this kind of cool saw-ish, triangle-ish kind of wave here, right? But let's say I also wanted it to that same wave somewhere else in here, right? And I didn't want to just have to dial through and be finicky and try to find it, right? You can do this really easy by just pressing the save button and holding it down. You'll see everything lights up blue that you can copy. Now this works on both the screen. It also works in here as well, like all of these buttons as well. So you can copy paste in the synthesizer. So now I want to copy this second waveform and I want to paste it. Let's say I want to paste it here. Now that waveform has been copied over. It's just a wave shape, right? Now I can copy any parameter, or I can copy all of the parameters all over the place. So without getting too crazy deep, before letting other people talk, the point there is that it's very fast to navigate around, and you can really do a lot of things that on other synthesizers that we're doing, like that would have a lot of oscillators or operators or whatever, a lot of the times it takes a lot of steps to get to where you want to go, or you have to individually edit a lot of different things. This is about allowing you to deep dive and deep dive quickly, but also allowing you to paint broad strokes, which makes things just much faster and easier.
I think Ken spent a lot of time talking about the user interface. It's so important because when you get a synthesizer this deep, if you don't have a well thought out user interface that lets you edit it quickly, you just aren't. You're going to end up not using it because it gets so painful menu diving, and there really isn't menu diving. It's pretty much everything you want is a single button press away.
Yeah,
and
I was going to say, and to overlay on the brilliance of it as I think the only OG DX7 programmer here on the panel. The brilliance of this is bringing the Hydrasynth UI expanded into the architecture of the engine was done brilliantly well. And the fact that they really, you don't want to just start thinking FM because it just puts somebody into a stupid mindset. This is going to have to be stupid difficult or stupid awkward. And so the fact that they really are distancing themselves from it and the fact that it does have that engine as its core is really the brilliant part of it. You know, I explained it to a lot of people as it's basically a Korg DW8000 on mega steroids.
I've had people ask, trying to get me to explain. They say, "Oh, I don't want to do FM." I mean, as soon as you start talking FM and operators, their eyes glaze over and they don't want to know about it. Yep. But it really, I mean, it's a standard virtual analog synth. If you want a sound that has 3 oscillators and emulates anything else you see back here, it'll do that. And you want basically it's a virtual analog with 8 oscillators per voice. Mm-hmm. And why you need that gain staging is if you have 16 voices and 8 oscillators per voice, that's about 128 voices going into that first stage. So you do need gain staging. But you don't have to have all 8. You could have one of those oscillators modulating another one in like phase distortion, like Casio or like a DX7. Or you could have it modulate, and listen to it as a carrier at the same time, which is amazing.
Jumping off of that point of the ease of use. That's one of the greatest aspects, I would say, of the Hydrasynth line in general, and like this has been completely transferred over. I mean, I've used the Hydrasynth for teaching purposes. Going back through historically, it is the MS-20 used to be used as a teaching instrument. They have the panel version that was like super big for like pointing around because the signal flow is so easy to follow. Hydrasynth just jumped off of that, took it forward, and says like, this is amazing teaching material possibilities in digital. Now we have the Leviasynth as well, taking that even further, where it's like, okay, well now like some of the stuff that you want to do with the complexities of the synthesizer is just super, super simple to hop around, choose what you want. And you can teach people like wavetables. You can, not wavetables, I'm thinking of the Hydra, but you can teach people easy FM. Like I think this is the easiest synthesizer for FM in general. Like I have a couple others, and like I go through this for analog basses. I go through this for just so much. It's insane. Like, because like when I think of something, I can just boom, or I want to modulate this, boom, done.
I've taken DX7 patches that are a nightmare to work with and translated them into this, and it takes 5 minutes. It's so easy to do. Oh,
and then you have the platform of modulation, and then you have the platform of the bias controls and everything, and
I'm like you. I had the Hydrasynth, and I know it, inside out, and I know the navigation and user interface. And then what it was a couple of years or so ago, and they just plopped this thing down on us and said, "Here you go. No manual, no explanation. Just figure it out." And
didn't take any time.
No, I was oh yeah, I get it. I understand. And then then I got my head around the engine. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing.
I will say, one of the big points that I try to hammer home to people is and I think it was like Anthony Marinelli or somebody did a video a little while back that I was like so happy to see, because it was basically about like enjoying the quirks of synthesizers and that sort of thing, of how like each synthesizer is its own thing. And I think people get hung up on all synthesizers have to work the same and that sort of thing. And with Leviasynth and Hydrasynth for that matter, one of the things that I really like to hammer home to people is we are our own synthesizer company, ASM. Like, we make our own products. We are not trying to emulate other people. We are not trying to make clones of other products. We are not trying to make knockoffs of other products. We are emphatically about pushing things forward, and with a deep, passionate love for the past. Every single person that works at ASM all of us, we are fanatics about
Nerds.
synthesizers. We are. We absolutely love this stuff. We eat, sleep, and breathe it.
Moment of silence for Robert Carradine.
And
I'm
it
so
is,
sorry.
you know, it's so there's a lot of things in Leviasynth and Hydrosynth also that do things that you might say, okay, the nomenclature, like the way things are worded to you may be displayed in a similar way, right? That you might be familiar with, but the way we do things can be different, right? So part of that is one thing that I had seen comments brought up about of like, oh, well, can you import DX7 patches? And I'm like, no, you cannot. And that was a distinct choice because one, it's not a DX7 and it doesn't work the same way as a DX7, and we want people to experience this synthesizer for its own. We're not trying to rehash something that was made, 30, 40 years ago. We're doing something different. We're doing it our way. And with that, can you remake patches? Absolutely. There are also ways that other synthesizer companies do certain things, like maybe their envelopes work differently. Maybe sync works differently. Maybe pulse width works differently. There's lots of quirks and differences in our synthesizers that we want people to experience and to enjoy that path of discovery, just like you would, when I buy synthesizers, sometimes I don't always buy a synthesizer because it's quote unquote the best, right? There was a synthesizer that I had bought a few years ago that I specifically bought because I felt it had some broken aspects of how it was made. Like the filter did some really weird stuff, and and that was part of the joy of it. You know what I mean? Like the character of what makes a synthesizer interesting and cool and unique. And there's reasons why you might want a specific hardware synthesizer over using a certain VST or using something else. It's all about inspiration, and it's all about discovery, and it's all about using the tools to create your own sounds and your own music and play them in your way. If you're a really great player and maybe don't focus so much on the sound design, it's important that the sounds are there for you and the playing experience is there for you. So there's a lot of focus on how things feel, when you touch a knob, like what's the viscosity of that knob feel like? How tight is it? When you touch a key, like what is the feeling of that key? Does it feel hollow? Does it feel thick? Like what's the spring action like? Same with like the ribbon
but back to the topic, we're trying to understand what the Leviasynth is. Andy, do you understand more now?
Yeah, no, the cobwebs are clearing from the NAMM videos that I shot, and also just walking around and watching people play it and stuff. So I'm just along the lines of what Ken was saying. I'm glad they didn't just take an original thing and just like, well, we're going to augment a little bit. Here's your DX7 patches and just go to town. Because, I have a little bit of everything in my collection, and it's nice to have something that totally takes you on a different path. You might have to spend a little time learning it, but that's okay because your brain's going to work differently. You're going to have different results at the end of the road. And not only it's healthy for your brain, they call neuroplasticity, but it's also good from a sound point of view and a sound journey. And, I didn't know I could do this. Oh, that was totally unexpected. And then you just end up somewhere you never expected to go. And the more out there some of these things can be and still be easy to use, the better, because you're not going to hear the same old damn patches everywhere like some manufacturers like to do. So
I get totally sidetracked with this synthesizer every time I start playing with it because you lose yourself in it. And I did want to talk about the analog filters because so much has been said. Oh, it's got analog filters and it's just a second filter behind. But ASM has done such a good job with the design and implementation of the analog filter. It's playable. Like Ken was saying, often you end up with something that's not playable polyphonically. And it's odd that he was saying that just before this call. I was messing around with it. And I was actually playing patches where all 8 oscillators, the level was at 0. And I was playing just the analog filter in self-oscillation mode. And it is such a beautiful, clear, perfect sine wave. and the key tracking is perfect. I mean, it's most synthesizers, when you do that, the key tracking is not linear, and so you can maybe get an octave or two where you can actually use it like that. This thing, the whole thing is playable. It stays in tune the whole way. You can play chords and things on it, and it works, and it sounds good.
That
was actually a really
well.
that was a really interesting aspect of the development was we had discussions about how perfect it should be, how because there's parts that you can put into a synthesizer that can dictate how well it's going to be able to track and how well you're going to be able to do that. And then the question is well, if it gets too perfect, do you implement a kind of fake analogness to it as far as like allowing that stuff to drift out? And also, do you spend the extra money on higher level DACs and that sort of thing? And do you need to do that sort of stuff? When the analog filter was done, we consulted with and had Cyril Lance involved in the production of this. For those of you unaware of who Cyril Lance is, this is the guy behind the Moog 1. This is the guy behind Sub 37. His lineage of analog design is extremely impressive, and he has a company called Resonance Designs. And anyway, we involved them in the analog circuit because we wanted to have really low noise floor, highly stable, but also we were really concerned about, like, we wanted to be able to do this thing with the gain staging, right? So during this process, I get super anal about, how things will key track and, how the resonance works and all of that kind of stuff. And so there was a lot of discussions about it. And at one point we were like, well, how is the calibration going to work? How are we going to go about doing our calibration, and how perfect do we want the calibration and all that? And what was funny is, while we do have calibration and we do work our magic to get things very nice, the design was so good from the gate that even with nothing calibrated, everything was really close, like closer than some of my vintage polysynths that I have here, for sure. After they've been calibrated, right? So, and that's just a testament to the circuit design and not just the circuit design in the terms of analog filter design and that sort of thing, but actual design of like how the PCBs are laid out and that sort of thing. Because if you can get noise and digital hash, and because you've got when you combine digital and analog, that's a very complex process, and a lot of there's a lot of pitfalls involved there. But yeah, I mean, going up and down the Keybed, it was like within a few cents of variation. Typically, when we would just test this stuff without calibrating, it's just that good. And then yeah, you can calibrate it and have it bang on, but if you, for instance, if I just, I'm going to give an example here. So I'm going to initialize this, and then I'm going to take the oscillator level down, and I'm going to drop my levels here so that I don't blow anybody's eardrums out. Let me see where I'm at here. Okay. So can you hear that?
Yep.
So just as an example, and I have not tuned the filter to a specific key, so don't pay attention to that. But the point being is, if I play octaves right now, you get just that slight detune across them, but it's very subtle, right? And I have not calibrated this thing at all today. So if I'm playing this, I mean, if I can go, that's just filter oscillation that you're hearing.
And I don't want you to subject it to us. I was actually doing this test earlier on, that if you take your cutoff and crank it up, it goes all the way up past what I can hear, and you can actually see it go up right up to the Nyquist frequency. It was like 22 kilohertz before it starts fading out, and there's no quantization noise. There's no nothing.
Yeah, so it's just the main thing to me though is so you can just have your filters kind of be how they are, like so. right? And then if I go into the system settings here and I go to calibration and I calibrate the VCF, it doesn't take very long. I think it's like maybe 20 seconds to calibrate, something like that. So I'm hitting calibrate now, and it's calibrating all the analog filters, and it'll take just a couple seconds here. And then once that's done, I'm going to hit exit. Okay. So I'll exit out of here, and so it's just that ever so slight. If you listen closely, you'll hear just that ever so slightly slow beating, and that's kind of what you want. You want it to be really playable, but still alive. Like it's still, it's still analog there, and that's a beautiful thing to have. And of course, you can then do things like if you want it to be further out and all that. There's so many options on how to make this thing further out and kind of detuned or warbly or unexpectedly wild or just like restrained, whatever you want to do.
You could set up a patch in the mod matrix so that it assigned multiple notes and then use different cutoffs. So you could actually do a tonal organ playing the filters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be? I love coming up with all that. Hey, you know what? I could do this.
Yeah, I think I have probably something kind of like that. I was messing with it when I was doing the voice mod patch, but yeah.
So,
and I just want to say for a second here, just to kind of be clear, aside from myself, the three other people in here that have Leviasynth in hands, Jonathan was a invaluable tester, so was Scott, and so was Manny. So these three guys have kind of had hands on this thing for quite a while. Manny, I think, I'm trying to remember. Jonathan, did you have one of the early units before we went away and
Yeah.
I did.
Okay, so
I was crying. I was like,
yeah. So and I won't go too crazy deep on that story, but this thing is not a Hydrasynth with analog filters. That was one of the early misconceptions that I was seeing in forums and whatnot. People thinking like, oh, it's $1,000 more than a Hydrasynth, but it's just a Hydrasynth with analog filters, and no, it's not. Not even a little bit. So the process of creating this, I want to say it was closer to like maybe 5 or 6 total years, but like really in testing and everything, it's been a good 4.5 years of like actual prototypes and working on things, that sort of thing. And at one point, we were working on it with a modified, like the chipset inside of it, digital side of things. It was like a modified Hydrasynth Deluxe kind of thing, where we were using A5 chips in it, like the Hydrasynth. But again, this is 8 oscillators and 13 envelopes, right? And 5 LFOs and 16 voices, right? So take the analog side out of this, right? Just think about that. That is a whole lot going on, right? Processor-wise. And because of that, we wanted that to work. We really did. And we tried our best. But at a certain point, we were really, really deep in development, and it became a situation of like we had standards of like, we're all fanatics about synthesizers, and we had standards, and it came to a point where it was like, we were trying to take out features to get the quality where we wanted, and we were trying to do this, trying to do that. And at the end, it was like, man, this isn't fun, and it doesn't sound as good as we wanted it to. So that is something that I think most companies, when you're that deep in development, will kind of throw their hands up and say, well, it is what it is. We've invested crazy amount of money. We need to get profit, and we need to push this stuff out. And it's been forever since we've had a new product, right? There was quite a few years where people were like, where's the new ASM product at NAMM and that kind of thing, right? And that's because we were deep in development. To ASM's credit, the leadership of ASM's credit, they took this to heart and really focused on quality over quantity. And that is something very rare in this day and age. So we went back to the drawing
That's
board.
rare in general. I mean,
Yeah, it really is.
I've only ever seen it once before in similar circumstances in all the time I've been doing this.
And to be clear, this was a functional synthesizer at this point. Like this was not something that was like so early that it's like it couldn't have come out. Like it was at a point where like there were some bugs and whatnot, but like it was a functional product.
Totally.
But it was about quality. It was about really like we wanted the user experience. Like for instance, just this is aside from the sound side of things, but you know, when you look at the screen, right? This is a touch screen here. One of the focuses that we wanted to do when doing the touchscreen was that we did not want it to be like an iPad where you're just touching the screen a whole ton. We wanted it to still be about buttons and knobs and tactile response and muscle memory and that sort of thing, right? But when we do use the screen, what we didn't want is lag. We didn't want it to feel like a 2003 Android screen where it's like you tap it and you're like waiting for a response, and we didn't want it to feel like BlackBerry Storm, right? So and early on it wasn't the worst, but it wasn't as snappy as it is now. And now it's like, I mean, literally you can touch this thing.
It's the fastest UI, snappiest UI.
It's so snappy, it's so fast, you don't even really notice that it's like touchscreen. Like it's used in the same way, like on the main screens, it's used in the same way that a Hydrasynth is used with the macro buttons, right? Except they're just giving you more information. Like instead of just a white button here, it's like you've got the name right on it, you've got the value right on it, and when you turn it, you can see both your LED ring and your value coming up here, and the number here, and the name, and then you can touch it to fire off when you want it to be at a set value, that sort of thing. But the key point of this is that we wanted it to feel like an actual instrument, and instruments need to not be laggy, right? So
I was really surprised at how improved the snap
came back.
By the old UI was not laggy. It was a good one, but this one is fantastic. And I think that is borne out when the Montage M came out. They upgraded the CPU significantly, and the UI in that is very, very snappy and quick. And then recently they came out with the Modi X version, the Modi XM, and it does not have that processor, and it has the same laggy UI of the old Modi X.
The old one.
And if you read online, that's all people are saying is it's slow and laggy, and they don't like the user interface. So it matters.
Well, it slows down your mental like thought process too, because then you know that you have to take that into account. Or sometimes a button doesn't register in the moment that you want it to register, and it just like throws you for a loop when you just want to have.
What I'm so impressed with is the oscilloscope.
You're doing everything you need to do, because as you're programming, you'll find yourself.
Sorry, Jonathan. You. I thought you were done, but you disappeared for a second.
I think there was a weird jump there. Yeah. Sorry. Oh yeah, no. I was saying is as you're programming, because you'll get really, really fast, and you'll get really like literate with the design of it, and you'll go through and you make like as I'm making patches, I'm just hopping around so quick that like having a sluggish UI really messes with that mental interaction.
And that oscilloscope that Ken is showing there, it's so fast that it's actually showing accurate waves. Because I've actually plugged in a DSO, a digital oscilloscope, during testing. And what I'm seeing on the output is exactly what's being shown on the Leviasynth screen. And it's a very, very accurate representation of what's being created up to, into 20 something
and to be
kilohertz.
clear, so what you're seeing on that screen is an actual oscilloscope. Like this is actually reading the audio output of it. This is not
the analog output at the end. And I've actually tested that.
Right. It's just not an algorithmic calculation before it goes in.
Exactly.
It's the real deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the Hydrasynth does this, but the Hydrasynth does not have this sort of power behind it to where it can refresh at, crazy high frame rates and all that this can do. So, and the trigger is the triggering is based on both note and whichever the loudest carrier is, which was another like kind of back and forth that we had during development of like, okay, well, like if you have 8 oscillators and you're doing XYZ with it, like how are you triggering it? Because if you're used to using oscilloscopes, right? there's lots of different ways to trigger an oscilloscope to get your waveform to basically be visible in and what you want to see visible on that screen. So obviously in a synthesizer, you're not going to give everybody trigger control and threshold control and all that stuff over your screen. Right. So it was like a balancing act of like, okay, well, like how do we want to display that and give that feedback to the user? And I'm really happy with how that turned out.
And you noted the 8 oscillators with their own envelopes and triggers and so on. A lot of virtual analog synthesizers, they say that they're modeling an analog synthesizer, but they aren't actually under the covers doing that. The oscillator doesn't exist until you press the key, and it spools up an oscillator, it spits it out. And sometimes they need, they'll say, oh, we need to start it at a random place in the waveform, so it's not starting at 0 to try to emulate a free running oscillator. Whereas kind of like your modular system, you have an oscillator module here, and then you plug it into a gate or an envelope and what have you, and then this works that way. You have the 8 oscillators in there, they're running, and you can open and close the gate and you will hear the sound. So it actually is very closely emulating an 8-voice modular.
So if you look at my screen right now, this is that VCA screen, and what you're seeing is exactly what he was just describing. So you'll see that there's level right here, right? And then there's no level here. And why is that? Well, that's because the oscillators are currently operating. Like the oscillators are going right now, and they're going from the oscillator into the digital filter, from the digital filter into the analog filter, and then it goes to a VCA. And the VCA is closed right now, so you don't have any level there, right? Now, if I press a key, I open up the VCA with the envelope, so then there's sound, right? But one of the really I love, and this is one of the things where like I just gave Glenn a huge hug when I saw him at NAMM, because this is something that I wanted in Hydrasynth really badly, but it was a thing where like we didn't want to go too nerdy to where it drove people away on Hydrasynth or confuse people, and then we had people asking like, why can't I stop the sound and that sort of thing, right? Well, on here, you actually, just like a modular system, have a VCA that you can offset. So if you just turn this up, all 16 voices just start spilling out. Right? Now you'll notice you're hearing different pitches inside of that. And the reason you're hearing different pitches inside of that is just like on a modular synth. The oscillators are at the point that I last sent them like a control at, right? So like if I play up the keybed now, so you'll hear all those voices in the background are following the last pitch that voice was at. And you can see the voices here. So if I'm going to start playing a little bit lower here. Right? So it's just a beautiful thing that you can do. So if you're into like ambient music or droning and that sort of thing, you can do that. Stuff. And that's just like a little touch here. And what's cool about this is like I have it really, really low, so I can play over top of that drone. And I can swell it up. And you can modulate all this stuff and just do so many cool things. And it's just really, really powerful in that way. But to Scott's point, everything is running at all times. It's not just like an on-off process.
It's the initial level. I cannot overstate just
how cool it is.
It's one of my favorite features.
It really is.
It's literally just a simple bias control, but it is. I've told everybody at NAMM when I was explaining the synthesizer to them. I tell all my friends. I even like myself. Like I love it so. It's one of my favorite parameters on this synthesizer period because it completely changes the approach to how you will use this instrument. It completely changes the approach of like thinking of patch creation and thinking of where your dynamics are going to be in your sound creation and thinking of how the envelopes are going to interact. And all of that can be sequenced and all of that can be like step LFO'd. And it's just, it's such a simple parameter, but it just blows the doors open for like a whole other world of like modular-esque synthesis that, and just going into ambient, going into drones. I was telling Ken about it at ASM and when I was at NAM and everything, and I was just going on and on and on. It's like it's just such an insanely good and simple parameter to have that I have to stop.
He's getting emotional about it.
It's beautiful because it is. And like if you're on the Facebook group, or if you're not on the Facebook group, Ken's posted a lot of videos just going into like creating the drones and this is all stuff like that I was telling people too. And it's just so good because you have 8 oscillators, but each oscillator can control its own output, and you have initial level for the VCA, and you can like throw on the LFOs, and you can have swells come in, but you can play chords because you can turn off key tracking, or like it's just insane. And this is one patch, and you have the multi
and the stereo signal path, which I love.
Stereo.
So you want to create your binaural patches, you can do that.
Which if you're doing that and you're using initial, and you're not like running any oscillators or anything like that, you are getting beautiful stereo noise because it's analog, which is just I love it. It sounds so good. It sounds so good.
So Henrik, let me summarize, since we've nerded out a lot of details. Let's summarize what we've actually done for the people, the view and Andy, right? Okay. We have a new, very versatile, very musical sound engine, okay, being controlled by the very usable Hydrasynth UI, expanded for that engine, so you can use it as simply or as complex as you want. But we've not even gotten into the fact that we still got a sequencer here with a whole bunch of really cool things that you can do. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott, Jonathan, and Ken, because I did sound design. I turned on the sequencer twice, but something that people always wanted in the Hydrasynth. We've got a very versatile sequencer on this. So
but I love the integration between the sequencer and the arpeggiator, that if you come up with a sequence and they're like, oh, I really like this sequence I've designed, I'm going to make you can just copy that into the arpeggiator section, and now you can use that as an arpeggio, or vice versa.
Yeah, so we haven't even talked about this thing yet, and that, I think Ken will admit, people were saying, when are you going to put a sequencer on a Hydrasynth?
Oh, yeah, we get that question all the time.
Here.
And again, it comes back to the whole...
There's your Hydrasynth sequencer. You recognize that?
Yes, we know how to do this, yes.
Yeah,
but the point is that we've only talked about the sound engine, and there's a lot of really cool stuff on this as well. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am very happy to have been involved with this. The sound engine, I think, is phenomenal. It can be as easy as you like. It's deeper than people realize, and it's going to be something for years. We're going to be getting stuff out of it that you didn't know was there. It's kind of going to be like this guy, okay?
Oh,
you know, it's one of these synth engines that will last a ridiculously long time because of how unique it is and how well thought out it is.
The worst thing about the Leviasynth is that I'm now thinking, which of these don't I need anymore? Because I'm not using them anymore. I just use the Leviasynth.
Yeah. Well, let me touch on the sequencer for just a quick second here. I'm gonna, and this is kind of for the people that right now, like Leviasynths are right now starting to just reach people's houses.
I've seen 2 people post that they got theirs today.
Yeah,
so that's great.
I think. So one thing that I want to talk about is the first thing that you should do when you get your Leviasynth is update it. Right, that's the very first thing you want to do. And that's kind of with any product is you want to check. For firmware updates and all that. So we did do an update, and it fixes a few minor MIDI things and whatnot in there. But one thing that it does do, that the update does, that might confuse people, is when you go to, like, this is the sequencer screen here, all right? If you are in sequencer mode, and I kind of need to, I don't know if I have a shot that's going to show this, but anyway, in the sequencer area, you have an ARP control and a sequencer control that has a set of 4 knobs, right? And that is for your mode, octave, gate, and entropy, right? Now, entropy in Leviasynth currently works for the arpeggiator, right? But if you turn it for the sequencer, it's going to say coming soon, right? And the reason is because we wanted to do more cool stuff with this knob in the sequencer mode. So if you see that, that is a very rare thing for ASM to do. Like, we pretty much always put out products that are just completely done. But we had done an entropy mode in the sequencer, and we were like, I think we can do something more interesting. And again, getting back to that whole like, development period of the Leviasynth, when we got back to work on it and we were like going right back into like, okay, well now we can do this, we can do that. Like we added functionality back into it when we developed a whole new digital platform underneath of this thing that is extremely, extremely powerful. And because of that, then it became a thing of like, well, all that stuff that we were thinking about, like, okay, well, we may have to take this out to get the engine to work better on the previous platform. Now we're in a position of like, okay, let's put that back in. Let's put this back in. Let's put this back in, right? And there's some really cool functionality that we did with that. But as a consequence of that, the sequencer kind of took a little bit of a backseat. So the sequencer was kind of like the last tested part, right? And it was like, okay, so like we had ideas and we did there is some really cool stuff in this sequencer, right? But the entropy aspect of it, I just wanted to clarify for people when they see it and they turn this knob and they see coming soon, that's because cool stuff will be coming soon for that. And I don't want to disclose what that is just yet. I want that to happen in its own time, and I don't want people rushing us about it because we want to get it right. But some really interesting things about the way that this sequencer works is essentially when you're in the sequencer mode, these are your steps, okay? And you can have, I believe it's 128 total steps.
Yep, 128.
But you'll notice that there's like this purple area here, right? And these are different sequence areas, right? And you'll notice that there's a blank one here, and that kind of relates to what I was just talking about. So you have your note, your velocity level, your gate, and then you have multi-trig, right? So multi-trig is, if you're familiar with modular sequencers, ratcheting is really big in the modular world. That's basically what you have here. Multi-trig is like ratcheting per step. Then you have mutes per step, right? Then you have drift. Drift is really cool. So when you're on drift, you can actually push and pull a step off of the grid, back or forward by percentages, right? And then you have probability, which is probability per step. So for instance, and this is probably going to be terrible, so I'm gonna actually have the volume all the way down, and I'm gonna do it like this. So I just turned my metronome on by holding Shift and touching tap tempo, and then I'm just gonna hit record. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I forgot I still have this stuff going on over here. Let me initialize. That's my fault. So, and I should really show this stuff also, how this works. So, there's no erase button on the sequencer, okay? You use the initialize button as your erase. And that works across the entire synthesizer as well. So this is like uniform functionality for the whole thing. So if I hold init, for instance, and I touch an oscillator, it just brings that oscillator back to the initialized state of the oscillator. Same with any of these like attack or, your envelopes or your filter or whatever. Holding init and then tapping a module will reset that parameter, okay? And that works the same in the sequencer as well. So for instance, if I hit init and the record button, it'll let me initialize the entire sequence, right? That's everything. Or I can initialize just a single track, right? So that would be like erasing a single track, whatever. You're going to see here we have your division. So I'm in the track parameters for the sequencer. So you've got division, then you have length, and it's unlocked right now. And what that means is that if I just start recording, like a real-time recording of the sequencer, it's just going to start adding steps. As time rolls, it's going to like keep going up, 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 right? But if I wanted to say, let's say I wanted the sequence to be 16 steps, I can press this button here, and then this is a little lock. I don't know how well you guys can see it on the screen. But yeah, so it's unlocked or locked, right? You can also change the play direction of your sequencer, right? So this gets, really heady and wild stuff here, but like for now I'm going to keep it forward. But yeah, you can play it backwards, you can play it forward and backwards, you can do forward and backwards twice, You
And
could
it's
do
modulatable.
zigzag, random, random once, random two, all kinds of different cool stuff, right?
And you can also truncate that length. So if you play it with it unlocked and you play 18 bars, you can go back and say, oh, I want 16 and lock it there. And then it'll repeat at that point from going forward.
And then you have step offset. Step offset is basically where the sequence is starting at, so you can push it and pull it and do different things there. Transpose, you can tap in a rhythm for how the steps play back, and then you can reset your steps. Sorry,
Don't gloss over that tap rhythm, because that's an amazing
I had
function.
to eat a chicken nugget there.
Yeah, it's really good.
The tap rhythm is it's totally different. I've never seen a sequencer that did that before, where you can play in the notes ahead of time and then alter the timing and rhythm after you've done it, after you've already played it.
It's
that's fun to do.
To be perfectly honest with you, it's a weird functionality. Anyway, moving forward, this little box here is present on all the screens. And I just want to clarify what this is. So this 2/2 right here, it's how many screens you have in a specific module, right? So what that means is like if I'm, for instance, on the oscillator screen, you'll see I have 5 pages to this oscillator. I'm on page 1. If I page down, I'm on page 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, right? So this synthesizer is a lot deeper than, say, Hydrasynth is. Hydrasynth, I think the most screens we go to is 4, and that's when you're editing step LFOs, I think, is like the deepest screen. But most things are no more than 3 screens deep, whereas on this one, we allow things to get a little bit crazier. Like, we kind of built this synthesizer for the people who want to dive deep. It lets you do some wild stuff. So anyway, page 2 of that sequencer, you'll also notice that we've got, you've got MIDI settings here, and you can lock it to global, or you can go to your upper or lower, because just like a Hydrasynth Deluxe, you have an upper and lower level in the Leviasynth, so you can do bitimbral patches, and you can do key splits and all that great stuff. You can also tell it the voices, how many voices you want to use for your sequencer, which is a really unique feature as well. And then you can do your gate length fix here as well. And then you can also apply scales in here. Now you'll notice that this is lit up blue, and that's because you have separate parameters that you can apply per track. And there's 3 tracks. There's 2 note data tracks, and then a macro track, right? And the macro track is all of these macros that you have set up in a patch can be sequenced per step, right?
Yep.
And that's what that is.
That's important, because a lot of sequencers, you will have specific parameters that you can modulate in the sequence. But this, if you want to modulate cutoff, you just assign cutoff to one of the macro knobs, and now you can modulate that as part of the sequence. So it's not limited to a preset few items. It's whatever you want to put in the macro knob, which is basically anything.
Yeah, like every note has a different algorithm.
So
yeah,
in here, you can assign your macros to be whatever you want them to be. And of course, each macro can modulate 8 things in a single macro. So this can be a whole lot of different stuff going on there, right? Now, going back to our tracks, right? Let's say, let me see if I can do this. This is going to be bad. Just because I'm not prepared at all. But you can do step recording, or you can do real-time recording, right? Now, real-time recording is a little bit, it's different. The way that this works is you've got your division, right? And that's the quantization that it's recording it in at, right? So, for instance, if I was to hit play right now, and I go to my track, you could see the sequencer running, right? And I have it locked at 16 steps. So it's 2 pages, 8 steps each right now, right? So if I want to, I can input steps in live, or I can do step record by shift and the record button. And now I'm in step recording mode, right? So let's just say I want to punch in some notes.
and it's polyphonic. Don't forget.
And then I'm going to do, I'll do a tie, and then a rest, right? And then I'm going to add, and then a rest. Okay, so now I'm wrapping around to 17 steps here because I'm in step edit mode. So in step edit mode, it's a little bit different in that you can keep adding steps, right? It doesn't matter whether you're locked or not, right? So now I'm going to hit track edit here. I just want to see where I'm at. So I'm at 16 step, right? So I have this basic sequence going on, and what I wanted to show with this is here's that note data, right? So there's your notes, right? And it's not really just it's kind of like a pseudo piano roll here, right? But obviously you don't see the notes next to it, so because it's, you know, you're screen limited on that kind of stuff. But you get the general feel of what's going on and the timing of it, right? So let's say I want to go to multi-trigger, right? And step 3, we'll bring this up to 4, right? And let's hear what happens. And this is my initial patch right here. And when I say my initial patch, just to so that people understand what the sound is right now, you can save a patch as your initialized patch. And what that means is basically set up a template of what sort of sounds you like to create, save that patch, and then you go into the system settings, right? And you can say, okay, I want, I believe it's, yeah. So save current patch as init. So whenever you double tap init, it just goes to that state. So for me, my state is this is basically a 3-oscillator synthesizer, right? So what I've done is I'm using oscillator 1, 2, and 3, right? And I set these all to saw waves, right? And then from there, oscillator 4 goes into 1, 7 goes into 4, right? 5 goes into 2, 8 goes into 5, and then 6 goes into 3, right? And basically, that makes it really easy for me to do, you know, really normal, you know, quote-unquote subtractive synth patches, right? Because these 3 oscillators are 3 oscillators, just like on a Minimoog or any other synthesizer that you can think of that's, you know, subtractive synth, right? And then these are all modulating from there. So, like, I know that these are my 3 oscillators, and then if I want to introduce some pulse width modulation, I can bring this guy up, or, you know, this guy up, or this guy up, right? And then if I want to FM that, I can do that and that, right? So it gives me just a lot of flexibility in this, and I'm on algorithm 62 to do that. I can still change this stuff around however I want, but this is just a very basic patch that I set up. If I go to my analog filter, for instance, right? Right now it's fully open because this is just a basic init patch. But if you look at the envelope, I've already set up a slope that I would typically like to program for this sort of thing. So I'm like in the ballpark of where I want to be. If I go into my voice settings, I've changed a few things inside of here as well, right? I still have analog field 0, random phases at 0. This is all normal. But if I go down here to the 3rd page, well, actually, second page, first thing I changed is my vibrato amount is down at 1 instead of 2. I think 2 is typical when you get it out the box. And then going down a little bit further, I have snap off. And what that means is we have 2 different timings in here. There's DCA and VCA timing. So with snap off, I'm using the VCA timing, which is just a little bit slower all throughout the synth, and it's just a little bit more like a slightly rounder sound to like how everything responds. When snap is on and you're using DCA timing, everything is sub-millisecond timing, so it's like super, super sharp. So if you want like key click and that sort of thing, you would keep snap on.
Ken, you skipped over you skipped over my favorite feature of the sequencer.
Oh, well, give me 1 second. Let me finish this, because this is like the last part of this that I'll show.
All right.
So if I go into voice mod, you'll see I've already set up a voice modulation, right? And what this means is I've set, you know, somewhat random values inside of here per voice. Now, what I can do is then I can use that as a modulator anywhere else in the synthesizer, right? So like I can have my filter, you know, one voice might have my filter slightly more open than the other, or my key tracking, or whatever it is, right? So that's my initialized patch. Going back to the step sequence here, right? And I'll just make this patch slightly more pleasant, and this will also kind of show you how fast it is to create a patch. Just really quickly, I'm just going to bring up the initial level of oscillator 2 a little bit, and I'm going to drop that down an octave and give it a little bit of detune. So I'm just going to do a 2 oscillator synth sort of sound. I'm going to bring my analog filter down here and give it just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You know what I mean. And then just a little bit of release here, right? So now if I hit play, right? So just a very, very basic patch so that you guys can hear what it is that I'm doing, right? So that multi-trig on step 3 is set to 4, right? And you can make this automatically flip pages for you, like it's on page follow right now, or you can make it so that it's manual. It's your choice. But if I set this really, really high, right? Or I could set it down to, like, let's say 2 and just hear it. Right? So really easy to set up multi-triggers on here. And we'll do maybe, yeah, let's do step 12. 12, I think, yeah, we'll do 3 here. And then this is where it gets really fun. So like probability, for instance, right? Let's say that step 3 that's doing that multi-trig, let's take this down to like 35%, something like that, right? Now when I play this pattern, see how it skipped it? It'll play it sometimes and it'll skip that step other times. So you can do some really interesting stuff with that. We can do drift. Let's take drift and that same third step, right? I'll push it up a bit, right? 40 will probably do it good. Actually, you know what? Let's go extreme just so you guys can hear it a little bit more. So now it'll push that step just off the grid a little bit there. And we can do, let's also do step 6. We'll go back. And actually, I think that one, yeah, we'll do this. So you can adjust your timings a good bit there. And what else would we like to do on here? We can adjust the gate, right? So let's do, make that, well, yeah, we'll keep that up here, but then we'll do step 10. We'll come down shorter, and then this one will go up a little bit longer. So you have per step modulations that are happening here, and it's really interesting way to kind of program the synth, and it's like you could do these cool step sequences with it, and you have multiple tracks to do that as well. So just very fun.
You still didn't hit my favorite feature though, Ken. And
okay, what's that?
With a lot of sequencers, especially if you have 127 or 257, whatever, if you have big long sequences, and it's painful to edit because you got to go step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, yeah.
And on this one, all you got to do is drag your finger on the ribbon, and you can just go anywhere in the sequence, and so you can instantly get to exactly where the sequence you want to go. So the ribbon turns into your navigation to navigate through the sequence.
That's definitely something a lot of people were very impressed by, is in terms of just quickly jumping to like either a problem step or trying to fill out a certain area.
To real-time scrub.
Yeah. I would like to, one thing to also harken back to the custom init as well. When I was talking to a lot of people at NAMM and Buchla and friends that were very impressed by like a potential use case of this scenario, is like you can have a bank where you have your like sets of init patches that you have already preset saved, like for like a bass patch or a lead patch or a pad that like they're all fitting within your sound design paradigm. Then you can like hop into one of those, load that up, quickly go into the system settings, save that as your new init. And now when you're creating patches, you're in that mentality of I'm doing basses today, I'm doing pads today, I'm doing leads today, or sound effects or whatever it is, or whatever could drive inspiration quickly. So that was something that's really, really cool. And a lot of people found like potential good utility out of it.
So one other really strange thing that you can do here, right, is I'm in the mod matrix, and what I did was I have LFO4. I can send that to different aspects of the sequencer, right? So this is where you get into really interesting generative stuff, right? I can have an LFO deciding the probability per step, right? As it goes. So the probability, the offset, the gate, all this stuff can be modulated in the modulation matrix, right? So the transposition, step offset, swing, mode, you could just do so much crazy stuff with it. And I'll be honest with you, again, this is the stuff that like kind of came in towards the end of development. So there's still so much stuff in there that I haven't even had a chance to like really, really dive deep into yet, that I'm still discovering and still like playing around with. I mean,
you can use it to, and I know this is a corner case, but I've actually done this. You can take a square, take an LFO as a square and modulate the length so that the first time through it plays 8 bars, the second time through it plays 16 bars, and you can sync that to the BPM.
Yep.
So it'll actually modify that as you're playing, which is really cool.
Yeah, you can hop around too. It's really nice.
Yep.
And there are people that are far more musical than me that are going to end up doing things that I know are just going to blow my mind. And that, like, I'm so excited for people to start getting their units, because I'm like, I can't wait to see what people are doing. During sound design, seeing stuff that like Manny was doing, and like honestly, Manny did a really great drum patch in it, right? And I was just like, man, like the way he did the drum patch in it, I was just like, oh,
The
this
one
is
that blows
so
me
great.
away of Manny's is the piano patch.
That's a good one.
And you get harmonics with velocity. I mean, that's such a good sounding piano. There was a piano. I think actually, Manny, you did one for the Hydrasynth as well. That was
No. Well, I did. Not in public consumption, but
okay. I know. I think I have it, but I mean, it's piano-ish. But I mean, this you could use this live as a piano all day long. That's
Not taking into account modulation.
correct.
If you want to go way beyond
Oh
the
yeah,
piano.
that's right, because there are.
oh yeah, the
macros
macros on
here.
it are beyond wacky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the cool thing.
Hey, wacky's a good thing. It is a synthesizer, so
The timbre, the steel drum morph. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And the Dreamtime thing on it, you can make it into a bad nightmare from the Wednesday series soundtrack.
It's
You
fun.
know,
And one of the nice things that you can do here with the screen is when you're in the browser, you can actually sort by sound designer. So if you want to
Yes.
go right to Manny's patches, you can just go right there and be like, oh, okay, well, like I want to hear that tightly bass that he did. Right?
I did one too.
So yeah, it's just really easy to like dig in and like you can search by sound designer, category, bank. You can go by number. You can go by name. You can set favorites, all that kind of stuff, and it's really easy to navigate it. But yeah, like I get a lot of people asking about the desktop. If it's they were like, oh, is it a drum machine? And they did the same thing about Hydrasynth desktop because of the pads that are on there. And I was like, well, say kind of, because you get like the way it's laid out. Like, yeah, you could absolutely play the pads. And
I see people asking questions. Is there going to be a Leviasynth Deluxe? Do I need to wait for that? I'm like, it already is.
yeah, it already is. Like
yeah, it
that's
starts as,
and that's kind of like one of the things about people ask about. Oh, is there going to be a Leviasynth Explorer? And I'll say this: one, we don't talk about the future. I myself, though, would be extremely surprised to see if that ever happened, because the architecture is like a whole different thing. It's not like how Hydrasynth was done. So, like, I would be surprised if we do that. That's
right.
all.
I
would
would
be
be
surprised.
surprised just from a UI situation.
Yeah, and
because
I'd be
the
surprised.
thing that makes it cool is the UI, and how you would ever shrink that down, I have no idea.
I'd
Yeah,
be surprised
and
to see
while-
8 analog filters, stable filters in that form factor.
While we are at the patches, the patch browser, one thing I've been thinking about each time I've seen someone demoing how to program it and how to play patches is I would like to, when I get it, to be able to take that patch and work with it. But I can't, when I watch a video, I can't discover or find out what patch is it that is playing. It's missing somewhere to show which patch it is.
On the Leviasynth?
Yeah.
From
It
I
shows
mean,
right on
when,
there.
when you sit and demo all this, it's only now we see the name, and when you use the browser. Before,
so it's always right at the top. Like if I'm playing a patch, like you'll see the patch name on the home screen will always be right there.
Okay,
right?
Then it's because you're not on the home screen all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the times, if I'm demoing something, it's probably because I'm modifying something anyway or doing something on the spot.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I think a lot of people they get it in their head that like, oh, it's so deep, it would just take me forever to make anything on it. And I'm like, no, it really wouldn't. Like I make patches on it, you know, to demonstrate all the time,
fast.
and it takes me like 3 minutes to make a really cool patch. So it's you know, it's actually really, really fast to do this kind of stuff.
You scrolled through all the different algorithms, but I think it would be interesting to show how flexible it is in the custom algorithm screen, because that's totally different.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, even using that as a learning aspect, because any of the algorithms there, you can quickly hop into an edit form, and it shows you how it's laid out.
And I actually use that a lot for myself, just to be like if I get confused about anything, like I will do that. So I'm in the algorithm screen here, right? And you can see I can just flip through different algorithms, right? And if I'm confused about like, well, what does this mean right here? Okay, like how is that actually working out, right? So oscillator 4 here and 8 is over here. So if I change this knob to custom, right, I can then see in a block diagram of how everything is modulated, right? And if I touch it here, it blows it up here, and now I can actually modify what's going into what. So I can completely fluidly change things around. So I can see oscillator 7, right, and oscillator 8. So this is the modulators, this is the carriers across the top, right? So the modulator, oscillator 8, right, is going into carrier 7 right there, right? Or technically it's going into modulator 7, I should say. But down this row, vertically, is what these knobs do, right? So this is the initial level for all 8 oscillators, right? And I can adjust them. So oscillator 1, right? If I turn this up, you'll see at the bottom here, right? That's oscillator 1, right? And if I, for instance, if I just touch this, I can go to my envelopes, and let's say I want oscillator 4 to be raised up, the envelope amount, I can do that, right? If I want to change how the algorithm is set up as far as, you know, what mode everything is in, I go to this section here, and I can change from FM, PM, you know, phase distortion, all that stuff right there. So there's a lot of redundancy throughout the synth as far as how to get to things and how quickly you can modify something or how quickly you can do things. This little section right here tells you exactly what's happening on the X, right? Mm-hmm. So if I, for instance, if I touch right here, now I have this, it's saying 8 is phase modulating 4, right? And if I touch here, it's going to say 8 is phase modulating 7. If I touch here, 4 is FMing, frequency modulating 3, right? So it's a very fast way to kind of see what's going on. And when I exit out of here, since I had, you'll be able to see everything just right there. If I change this to morph, you can actually morph between those algorithms. And you can modulate this, or you can do it by hand, or you can do both, right? So like, for instance, if I just start, I don't know how this is going to sound because I haven't heard this patch, but.
By the way, setting up wave mod or the voice mod with this is really cool.
Yes, yes.
I have to ask one thing.
Sure.
I remember on the Hydrosynth, you came with firmware 2.0, where suddenly you have had 2 more banks of memory. Do you have a lot of extra memory here for firmware at the moment? I mean, I could see a blocks game here.
So the question really is about what I'm allowed to say.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll just say that it's an extremely powerful platform, and leave it at that.
Yeah.
And the one thing that he didn't mention there in that custom edit screen that is foreign to anyone that's done FM synthesis before, you have a carrier and a modulator. The modulator is modulating the carrier. The carrier means you hear it. Whereas
Manny, pay attention. You might learn something.
Yeah, I don't have time for this show.
This is totally different in that, yes, it works that way, but if you also want to hear that modulator, you can do that. So if you have a modulator and it's modulating this, but you also want to hear that in the mix itself, you can actually do that very simply.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot in here that's really helpful as far as like if you're new to like FM or if you're new to synths in general, that you can kind of like use it as a method to understand this stuff better, because it's so well represented graphically. But I would actually love to hear a little bit more from Manny and Jonathan about, like, you know, synthesis and what they do with it, like what things that they find inspiring when they're programming on it. Because
and Ken, there's one important thing you just mentioned there, because I've had many people ask me, is this synth good for, it looks really complicated, is it good for a beginner?
So that's one of those things where I will say that this is a complicated synth. I'm not going to pretend like it's not. That being said, those who are good at exercising restraint will find rewards there. Same with Hydrasynth. So like on Hydrasynth, if you exercise restraint by not digging into the mutants right away, right? Mm-hmm. And you just use this module, this is literally a map of the voice structure, right? So if you just say, okay, these are your oscillators, right? And you use this section as just like in algorithm 1, and it's just basically a mixer at that point, right? And all of these are just spilling out the front end of this thing. All the oscillators are flowing into the digital filter, from the digital filter into the analog filter, right? The dotted lines show you hard-coded pathways. So like envelope 2 is already going to analog filter 2. So you don't need to map that in a mod matrix or anything like that. It's already there, right? And it's represented here, right? You've got envelope 2 is right there. Your pre-drive. So you've got dedicated controls for this stuff. But if I, for instance, go in here, you'll see LFO2. LFO2 does not have a dedicated knob there. But if I go into analog filter, right, on the UI here, so LFO2 is right there. Like, you don't have to go into the mod matrix or anything like that. So when you see a dotted line, that just means that it's already there. Like, you don't have to do any kind of jumping through hoops to make anything work. It's already there, right? A hard line means that it's just flowing straight into it, right? So then you go to your VCA, from your VCA to your effects sections, right? And then straight on out. So if you exercise restraint and just think of it as like, okay, here's my oscillator, right? And my oscillator goes into my filters and then goes through. It's a straight pathway, right? So it's useful, and the UI will kind of show you, okay, this is what an envelope looks like. This is what a longer decay looks like. This is what a shorter decay looks like. Hey, what does a exponential curve look like? What does a logarithmic curve look like? It can be really useful for that sort of thing, you know?
You can actually see it move through the envelopes and as you're playing it. So I said the same thing. If you want to just start out and use a very, very small subset of the features to learn, it will, question, you can do that, but it will absolutely grow with you, and you'll probably never outgrow it.
Now I'm gonna let Manny and you guys kind of talk about what you guys like doing on it for a little bit, because I still have my soldering iron on and I want to finish soldering this battery into my SQ80.
So I can be quite wordy. So Jonathan, you start.
Well, where do you start with the depths of the ocean? Okay, let me see. So one of the things I really like to do is one of the cool features that's possible with the oscillators is you can put them into a frequency mode. So instead of key tracking or using ratio control, you can just have them play as just static frequencies. So something that's really fun to do with the 8 oscillators, and this is something I used to do with the Hydrasynth as well, but it's a little bit deeper here because of the oscillator count, is I would have like very complex wave shapes that would normally have like a lot of harmonic content just in the wave shape itself, and then playing like just having those free running at low frequencies, and then just hearing all the small little changes going, and then now you bring in another oscillator and then have that FM the first one, or phase modulate the first one, or pulse width the first one, also at a really low like frequency, and then it's just like maybe 1 to 10 hertz, 1 to 5 hertz ish, and then you just start compounding and compounding and compounding, and then it really depends on where I'm at in the headspace, because I could kind of do whatever with the synthesizer, but like, that's something that's really fun to do is trying to push against the boundaries of the limitations of it, because the limitations will breed creativity. So you can't do everything with the synth, but at the same time, because you can't do everything with it, it will push you in directions that you don't think about.
And because the user interface is so simple and it lays out graphically what it's doing in terms of FM, because like I said before, people's eyes glaze over when you mention FM, but when you have it just in front of you and you can just play with it by twisting a knob, oh, look, I'm changing this modulator. Oh, that's what the sound does. Oh, what if I do this one? Oh, I hear that. Now it's making noise. What does the feedback do? And so you can actually, whereas like a DX7, you could never do that. You have to have, you almost have to have a sound in your head ahead of time. Even, the montage, it's not as intuitive as having the user interface where you can actually see graphically what it's doing and what's affecting what, and just twist things and see how they sound. So I think it's a good way to learn FM, or that type of synthesis, or phase distortion, which most people don't even know because Casio kind of abandoned it decades ago.
Shame.
But, yeah.
Shame indeed.
I don't know. I mean, recently I've been translating kind of in the same vein of not necessarily DX7 patches. I don't have a DX7, but translating FM patches from synth that I had done. But anyways, going into that aspect, and like as I start translating them, I've done this even with some of my Hydra patches that I've carried over or tried to carry over. I will start to just find myself creeping into adding more and more modulation and more sources and more of this and that. And next thing I know, I've populated like 16 slots in the mod matrix that I only had 4 in the original sound, just because I have all the extra LFOs and that I could use in different ways, and all the extra envelopes that, like, if I'm not using the 8 oscillators envelopes, those could be loopable. Those are open for modulation. So it's just like it. I don't know. It's just the more you play with it, and
I also like that the hardware itself has the physical bandwidth and resources to do anything you want, and you don't ever get to the point where like, oh, you can only have this many voices. Because I was actually, just before we even started this, I was playing something on the Phantom down here. And I was just disgusted because I was playing something, and as I started playing a low end to it, I lost top voices because it was running out of polyphony and resources. I'm like, it's so frustrating to me that it's the performance of the unit is variable depending on the complexity of the patch. Whereas this, you can make the most horrendously complex patch, and it's just going to play it happily, do it, and the UI isn't going to slow down. It's just going to do it.
Oh yeah, fill every slot in that custom algo edit. Completely fill it up. Use all 32 slots, have everything go everywhere, and it still runs like a dream.
It's funny, I actually feel really guilty a lot of the times, because I'll make a patch that I'm like, this sounds really good, and I'll use like maybe 1 modulation matrix slot, because so much stuff is already mapped for you. Like, for instance, all 8 envelopes for all 8 oscillators are already mapped for you. Like, it's already inside of the oscillator, so I don't need to do anything. Polyphonic aftertouch is already there. Like, you don't have to do the polyphonic aftertouch in the mod matrix for a lot of the functionality, because it's already in the analog filter. It's already in the oscillator section. It's already in the digital filter section. It's already in the VCA section. Like, if I just to show you real quick. So if I'm in an oscillator, right, and I go to the last page of the oscillator, right, poly aftertouch is right there.
Right
It's
there.
on a knob. So if I just turn this up and then I press into the key, it will bring up that oscillator level, right? So like, and it's like that all over the synthesizer because, you know, a lot of this stuff is stuff that we kind of learned from Hydrasynth that we were like, man, I wish we had this functionality in Hydrasynth, so we put it in here.
And a lot of the time, I'll create a patch, and I'm like, okay, I've got it pretty close to like what I like. Oh wait, I haven't used any macro knobs yet. Okay, how can I screw up the patch?
Yes.
I do that
Yes.
all the time.
Yeah, I had one thing that I had kind of done. I'm still kind of semi working on it. One thing I had done with my Hydra is exactly like that. So I would have a patch, and then I would set it so that the macro buttons, when you're pressing them, it goes into a switch mode. And I basically would make 8 mini patches within my patch. So and here on the Leva, it's even crazier. So I could just tap on it. It's like, okay, now I'm going from keys. Now I have it set to pad. Now I get like, okay, now I tap and it goes into like a weird FM like setup or whatever, or like maybe the first little setup that I have in the macro. Because the macro is it's insane. Like you can have a bass patch and then turn it up, and now you're using the next 4 oscillators. I only have a patch where I'm using 4 oscillators. Now I'm using the next 4, or I'm using 4 sets of 2, and I can just bring them in with like different FM algorithms or configurations, and it just never ends.
Exquisitely deep.
It is. It's insane.
A question I've seen posted that I know I've personally answered quite a few times is the Keybed. They want to know if it's different than the Hydrasynth, and I have to say it's definitely better. It's
Yeah.
I think they increased the weights on it.
So
Yeah.
I'll speak specifically about that. There's some minor differences that go a long way. So underneath the key, if you have a Hydrasynth, right, and you feel the key, right, and you'll feel where the key weight is, the key weight will stop about halfway on the key. What was changed is the length of the key weight now goes the entire length of that key where you would place your finger, right? So it effectively it changes a few different things. It changes one, the way that the velocity of a key strike happens, how thick the key feels to you. Like when you tap the key, it now feels like a much more solid key, which is like, these are like subtle changes, but players will really notice this stuff. It's one of the things that kind of always
Sensory.
yeah, it's just like a weird sensory thing that, like, me personally, I always wanted the key to feel like a little bit more substantial, and it made that big change. So, but along with that, because you're changing how the weight is sitting in the key and how much weight is there and all that stuff, so the way it's sprung is different, and just the action feels just slightly better. It's just refined is the best way that I would.
It's got a little
Refine's a
bit
good
more
word.
mass.
Yep.
And I'm sure you had to adjust the velocity curve as well.
Oh
But
yes, yeah. The curves are. Dominic is the man. It's because Dominic. I cannot stress enough how much work Dominic put into those velocity curves on this. That was. It was kind of a battle, to be honest with you, to get them just right, and it was a lot of work. And it 100% credit due to Dominic for really. Sticking to his guns and making sure that it came out the way that he wanted it, because that was Dominic, and he crushed it. So
Plays
And
like a
Medeli
drill.
knows keybeds, that's for sure. You can see 2 ASM synthesizers behind me, but I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Medeli keybeds because they make them for other synths. They just don't publicize it.
yeah. I mean, ASM is my dog. She's underneath my studio desk. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Medeli is a large manufacturing facility for the music industry, and a lot of top brands are manufactured there. So we have the pleasure of supplying keybeds for a lot of really great synthesizers and whatnot. It's not our first rodeo, put it that way.
I have a patch modification question. As somebody who can often be quite lazy and likes to modify other people's work, it's a kind of a twofold thing. Can you easily randomize elements or an entire patch, and can you
Yes.
do patch genetics on patches you like?
Yep. You can randomize in a couple of different ways. One, you can randomize the entire patch. You can randomize individual elements of that patch. Okay. You can also have it randomize not just totally bizarre numbers from anywhere. A lot of the time, you just do it a complete random and you get silence. But you can tell it to randomize using the existing patches you have in the synth as a baseline, and we'll just pick from those, assuming it assumes that the parameters used to build those patches are going to create something usable, and so we'll take aspects of that and of those and randomize from those.
Is it a setting just called random, or is it something else?
Yeah,
it's a button.
It's just a button.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a dedicated button, and when you just press random once, right? I'm going to show you on my screen. Press random once, you'll go to this screen, and the first thing you'll see is generate from scratch, which is a completely random thing. Randomize from patches, which is pulling parameter values from other patches. But then you'll notice that there's percentage values for each module section, right?
Okay.
And then, and you have multiple pages of that, okay? But then on top of that, you could do something like, if I press and hold random and I say press oscillator 3, right? I could randomize just oscillator 3 like that, right? And on the screen, it'll say randomize oscillator 3, and I could say yes or no, right? What I could also do is I could press and hold random, and if I'm pressing and holding random, let's say I just touch the waveform, it's just going to randomize the waveform now, right? By that percentage amount that's set in the in that previous screen that I had showed you, right? So I'm just randomizing my waveform now. If I want to just randomize the pitch here, I can just randomize that, right? So there's lots of opportunities for you to get, inspiration from random.
Thank you. Excellent.
It's like playing with loaded dice.
You often get interesting and usable sounds, and I have done it quite a few times where I'm just randomizing things to see what I get. I'm like, oh wait, okay, now if I change that, and that's what starts me off.
So is it kind of a reeled-in random, or is it a truly like? Because often I've used randomizers and other things, and it's like, wow, that's either nothing or completely garbage.
If you just hit random, where it randomizes everything from scratch, you'll get noise or silence.
Yeah. Okay.
So going back to the sound design question. You cut me off whenever, Henrik. I'm going to go deep nerd here.
Okay, that's enough.
Now, first of all, I want to start off with, you don't have to. Okay, and that's the best part about it. It's easily approachable as a virtual analog, if you're familiar with that. It's easy to do that thing. It's very simple to make a patch that with the macros and the pre-assigned knobs on it, you could almost get a knob per function virtual analog synth where you could pick the waveform, the sync depth, the pulse width, the envelopes and depths, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's easy to do that. What drew me to this project was they have developed the closest to my ideal FM-based engine. But I want to stress, you don't have to use it this way, okay? This is just for me. In that, with these 8 oscillators you can put together in any way you want from the custom mode, and the morphing ability that you have amongst the preset algorithms, there is a huge amount of power in this machine if you want to pursue that rabbit hole. So let me give you some abstract examples of things you can do here that you don't see anywhere else. Okay. Let me rephrase that. Anywhere else but here. Okay. And some soft synths to pick that. Okay, so here's what we got. We got 8 oscillators. Oscillators can have complex waveforms. They can interact in a analog style FM relationship. They can do it in the DX7 style phase modulation relationship. You can do pulse width modulation and HTE sync, which are actually preset subsets of phase modulation math. You can use your Casio based stuff. So you have a lot of things already there on your palette. So now you can play construction set if you are familiar with all these things and what you can do with them. So here's what they gave you. They gave you, and Jonathan mentioned this in one context, but there's a second context of it, which is you can have a zero frequency oscillator. Okay, when you use those interactions that we talked about with a zero frequency oscillator, okay, it becomes a de facto wave shaper. So a combination of its modulation index and its phase offsets, you can do wave shaping that's outside of traditional things that people think of in an FM or some other synthesizer, even a quote wave shape based synthesizer. Secondarily to that, you have full phase offset control for every wave. Those are all fully modulatable. Okay. The feedback is 4-dimensional, I'll call it. Well, technically 3-dimensional, because you have positive feedback, you have negative feedback. Feedback can be fixed independent of the level of the oscillator, or it can be easily set up in the mod matrix so it's dynamic for the level out of the oscillator. You may think, what difference does that make? Well, sonically, it's actually a very characteristic difference in the way that high harmonics do their thing and in terms of other things that happen down the line. They also put into, and I don't know if this was an after effect of the re-engineering to the hardware, there's 2 modes. That's what they call vintage mode, and then the default mode by which the machine calculates everything and runs it through the DACs. And when you click on vintage mode, there's distinct changes in bandwidths and certain behaviors because it changes the interaction of the engine to the DACs and the resolution of certain things. And so you have that aspect of it as well. So there's a smorgasbord of stuff here that I've been dying for an expansion of what Yamaha abandoned in the SY series. And having played with this as long as I have, what you can do in this type of engine is massive. Okay, you can mimic physical modeling, you can do the obvious virtual analog things, you can do wavetable based stuff. We didn't even talk about the looping envelopes that we have that can be tempo synced or not tempo synced or modulated by other things. There's so much here. It's going to take a long time to leverage what it does well. That's totally unique, because unfortunately we're on a time constriction getting preset banks out, and you have to remember, you have to have make this thing appeal to a lot of people. They can say, I can use those sounds right off the bat, right? So, my most gorgeous envisioned synth sound, okay, which you have to play the knobs, so anybody can do what they want, okay? Those aren't the kind of things you're going to see in the first preset banks. Now, I'm not going to speak for Ken, but, after they released the Hydrasynth, there was additional... Well, I was saying, when you guys released the Hydrasynth, you released additional ASM banks after the fact, and, I hope we see those things coming, because there's so much in this that just really puts the thing to the forefront. There are timbres and behaviors in this thing you will not hear anywhere else. Nowhere else. You can mix the analog saturation components of your filters and your traditional filter behaviors with something really extreme through the algorithmic engine. And I haven't even talked about stereo.
I know.
So you have the stereo mode. Restart that scenario. So here's the cool thing. You turn it into stereo mode, great. You have a detune page where you can set the stereo spread, where they set the detuning side to side. You can pan your individual oscillators, okay, and have that be modulatable. So in an algorithmic structure, you can have some harmonic content on this side of your sound. You have more different harmonic content on this side of the sound, and those harmonic components can pan within the structure of an overall harmonic component. We haven't had a chance to really leverage that well yet, okay? But in a soundscape situation, an ambient situation, drones, there's a huge potential there for that.
You are all saying it only takes a few minutes to make a patch. Can you demo it?
I would defer to Ken or Scott, who's got the screen.
I can do it right now.
Yeah,
I got it right now.
Yeah,
it's
please,
really
please.
easy. Yeah.
So I'm gonna try and do this in a way that makes sense. And what I'll do. So here's the question. Okay, I'll give you a choice. You can have me either use how I explained before, I said, I've got init, and my init starts off, in a certain way, or I can go from what blank would be when someone just buys the synthesizer, right?
Go from that one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So from that, right, I'm just going to... That initialize setting, right, from when you just open up the synthesizer and you go to a blank space in the patch bank, right? That with no init set is a algorithm is 1, which looks like so. All right, and you only have one oscillator going, and that's a sine wave, right? I'm gonna show you this because I like this. Okay, this is something that I'm just like personally like I'm a little bit like. I try not to read every comment on the internet because it can drive everybody crazy, right? Which, by the way, my modification to my SQ80 works. So I finished that now. So one comment that I've seen people say that makes me kind of like, I'm going to try not to be a snarky jerk, but I'm going to come off as a snarky jerk here, all right? It makes me laugh at people and be like, oh, you dumb. Is when people are like, oh, it sounds too piercing, or it's too this, or it's too that. I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about because you haven't actually played it and you haven't done anything with it. It's none of those things because it's not too dull and it's not too sharp because it is how you make it, right?
Yep.
And that's something that I'm going to demonstrate in the patch that I make right now, right? So I'm going to do this kind of quickly, but also I'm going to walk through it, so it's going to be slower than what typically would be, right? So the first thing I want to show you is, let's say I'm on algorithm 1 and I want to make like a cool, like kind of prophet-y type pad sound, right? Now, I could start off with a saw wave, right? Like so. And let me just double check my audio settings and see where I'm at. Yes, I still have stereo audio on, so you should be able to hear that. So right now, one oscillator. And this initial saw wave is a pretty straightforward mathematical saw wave. Right? But let's say I want it to be smoother without using the filter in it. I just want a different character. Well, I've got a ton of these basic waveforms. There's no filtering going on here. It's just the wave shape, okay? Now I could do lots of different, I've got so many different saw waves, and I personally created a lot of these waveforms. So I know these waveforms, I know where they came from, I know how they were made, I know why they were made, right? And a big part of why they were made, right? Even though you might look at as a great example, right? We've got multiple, like you see this is a triangle wave, right? But if I go all the way back to the mathematical waves, right? There's a triangle wave right here, right? Or this one here, right? So there's all these different waveforms that you're like, okay, well, that's really similar. Why would you bother putting such a similar waveform in, right? And the reason is because what those do when you get deeper into synthesis, when you get deep into like FM and phase distortion and, you start using high ratios and that stuff, these subtle differences make a massive difference in how your patch sounds, right? Yep. So it was really important to have, one, super strong fundamentals. And what I mean by having a super strong fundamental is the bass, right? When you go low, that bass needs to be there. It needs to be thick. It needs to be in your chest and all that. A lot of people with the Hydrasynth didn't understand that, like, okay, if I have a complex harmonic wavetable, where did my bass go? It's like, well, you've got a complex harmonic wavetable. Throw a sub-oscillator on there that's like a sine wave and like beef it up. Like, you got to think about what you're doing. So in this one, I wanted to make
sounds
sure,
thin and tinny.
Yeah. So when people say stuff like that, I'm like, okay, well, like, learn. But also, I wanted to make waveforms that made sense for this particular synthesizer, right? So there's a lot of the Hydrasynth waveforms are in there, but there's also this whole new group of waveforms that are very specific to what we're doing here. So again, getting back to my point of like, we want to do like a kind of like a classic analog polysynth type sound, right? Now, I can do different things with these saw waves. I've got all these different waveforms that are, saw similar waves, right? But I want to show you something really cool. And that is, let's say I have a wave shape that's kind of saw, but not all the way saw. All right. I'm doing this specifically because I have Manny here, and we're going to have a conversation about this. So let's say this is a great one. This Gen Ramp 1, named after my wife. Okay. So this is cool because it's pretty bright, but it's not all the way bright, right? Right? Now, let's say I want to make this just slightly brighter without using a filter, right? I want to keep this character, but I want to make it slightly brighter. What can I do? Right? Well, the feedback there. Now, I can dial in just how sharp I want this thing to sound. Now, I can go overboard. If I go overboard, it's going to get noisy, right? Right? But this is giving me complete control over just how sharp or how smooth I want the character of the raw oscillators to sound. And that's really important, you know? So let's say I just want this just a little bit bright, but not crazy. Now, to do this quickly, right, I just have one oscillator set up. That's all we have. All I did was select a waveform, and I increased the feedback just a tiny bit, right? Check this out. Save oscillator 1 to oscillator 2. Now I've copied oscillator 1 to oscillator 2, and I want, I'm actually going to go ahead to my pitch, right? And if you look here, I'm in the pitch screen so I can see all my pitches, right? I'll drop this one down an octave and this one down an octave. Maybe in the fine section, I'll give it just a little bit of detuning. So we already have, like, and let me just make sure I'm not clipping any interfaces or anything. I'm in my VCA screen. I'm just dropping the VCA level a little bit. What I'm not doing is I'm not messing with these levels here. It's just the VCA. So this is a clean reduction of volume here that's not impacting anything of my sound that's passing into the analog filter. Now, I have it low. I'm going to go really low. And the reason why is because I'm a dirty old man. And I like to whack this guy here. And now you can see I'm clipping out my analog filter. So let's look at this. And if you look at the wave shape difference here with low pre-drive, right, versus bringing that up. So I like it to go right about there. And now I'm going to go ahead and use my analog filter. I'm going to drop that down, all right? And we're going to give this like a nice chill kind of vibe, all right? So just adjust this a bit. I want this thing to be like real cool. I want to go like so. So I'm just adjusting my analog filter envelope. And I want some poly aftertouch to my analog filter. I usually don't go too crazy with it. I'm going to do like maybe 14. Right? And here's the part where I was talking smack to Manny, right? Because Manny and I have had a discussion about this, and he was talking about how, you know, on some other synths, you might have the feedback here, but the feedback would be post-envelope level, and here we have it more to the initial level, like it's direct through, right? But I'm going to do something cool here. So I'm using the feedback to brighten up my saw here. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to use an envelope to make one of the saws go more bright than the other one, right? So I'm going to use envelope 5, for instance. Actually, you know what? Let's stick inside of here just to make it like super straightforward. I'm going to use oscillator 2's envelope, right? Which I'm not using for level. I'm just going to use for my feedback, okay? And this is going to go like so. So I've got this. It's going to be like maybe close to 5 seconds there and like another like 3.5 seconds, something like that, right? And what this is doing is when I go to the first page, there's that feedback. I'm just going to hold oscillator 2 and press the feedback. It's kind of hard to see in the way that the contrast on my screen is set up right now. But right now, a bunch of these are lit up gray. Okay, you can see this is lit up gray, this is lit up gray, this is lit up gray, gray, gray. And what that means is that I'm holding the oscillator 2 button down. When I press that, it's going to make that modulation connected, right? So now I've done that, and you can see oscillator 2 envelope is going to oscillator 2 feedback, and I'm just going to increase that, right? So now I'll increase it by like maybe 28. So as I play this sound, you're going to hear, and let me open up the filter a bit so you can really hear it without any issue. So you can hear that second oscillator gets brighter and brighter as it goes, okay? And then it'll kind of like come back down, but it's a nice movement that's kind of subtle in the background of this. So then I just want to give a little bit of tail here.
Can you also add stereo oscillator voices? Just so we get it here for difference of that?
So and in doing that, let's go ahead and make this a little bit more more interesting with that. So I'm going to go into the custom edit, right? And I'm going to use oscillator 4 is going to go to oscillator 2, right? And so now I have 4 going into 2. As I bring this up, I can FM it, I can do whatever I want. But what I'm going to actually do is I'll do pulse width modulation, right? And I'm going to use the envelope of oscillator 4 to rise and fall on this, right? And I'll bring it to like maybe 70. And let's just give that like kind of long envelope, right? And what I'm doing with this is I'm going to make this looping infinitely, okay? So now we have that, and this was what? Down an octave. I want this down 2 octaves. And now I'm going to take this stereo like what Scott just talked about, but I'm going to change this to mod only. So I'm going to, and my detune is only going to be 5 cents. Mod only, I'm going to modulate oscillator 4 left and right. And what's going to happen is, hopefully, if this stream is in stereo, you'll hear it. The modulation is going to go left and right, and I'm going to turn it to a triangle wave. I'm going to drop it down to about maybe 47 should be good, and I'm going to make it now. One other thing I want to do, just to make this more interesting, I'm going to give it a little bit of analog feel. Random phase is going to be per voice, okay? And I'm going to turn the bit depth down real low, all right? So this is going to make it dirtier, but that analog filter is down pretty far. So what that's giving me is this kind of like filtered noise that's... So really easy to get to that kind of analog pad sound, okay? And just to really mess with people's heads real quick. So that's that. I'm back to init. Now check this out. If we take this and we just go really, this is going to be really quick. We're going to go here. Yeah, 1. So 6 is going to be, I'm going to change this to, I'm going to just run through this quickly so you can see my normal workflow, all right? So we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, boom, boom. I wonder if you guys can follow what I'm doing here. You don't have to... Right? So then we'll do this. Alright, and then we'll do a little bit. Actually, you know what? We're going to... Let's make it weird. We're going to make a weird sound. So we'll go here. This up a little bit, this down a little bit, get this some analog filtering. This is going to be a little bit sharp. And then we'll take this. Key tracking is going to come down to about 50% on this. Bring that down just a hair. So this is effectively only using 2 oscillators right now, and one is just modulating the other. All right. Another cool tip is when you see this in the corner, that's your algorithm, and it's all color-coded. So that corresponds to these buttons here, right? These are all color-coded as well. So you can really quickly just see what's modulating what. And I can see that purple is modulating red, right? So if I want to add some really high overtones on that, like I'm going to take this to like 8, something like that. And it's going to be kind of high here, but it's going to be just this little clicky sound that I'm adding into it. And you can use these envelopes anywhere, right? So this envelope that's on 6 here, let's say if I want to double that and have it go to the digital filter, and I'm going to have it go to the morph of the digital filter. So that'll go here. Now watch what happens when I change what Manny was talking about earlier, that to that vintage digital mode, right? Totally changes the character of that, right? So now I'm going to take 6 and I'll back that off a bit. We could do. And hopefully, let's see if this. Did they say whether or not they can hear it in stereo or not?
Yeah.
Yes, they can.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
So.
And those little green circles are indicated of which voices are playing.
Exactly, exactly. And in this algorithm, right, I'm not using 2 just yet. If I go to 2, I'm going to drop this down an octave, and I'll make it a kind of cool wave shape like so. And let's go. A quick shortcut here is if you just hold Shift and press down, you get to the last page. Right. So now I'm on the last page, and I'm going to use Poly Aftertouch to go all the way up here. So check this out. If I do, not sure how well you guys can hear that there, but I'm bringing in basically a sub-oscillator by just by Poly Aftertouch on that, right? So I can, and if I want, I can maybe give it just a little bit of detune on that, not a lot. And then just a little bit of that. So really, I mean, 2 totally different sounds really quickly to get to, you know, and that's with me explaining it and stopping for other people to show stuff, but so fast. I do want to show one quick thing here. If I'm in this screen here, right, and we've made this patch and we're like, okay, but we want some control over this patch. Macro, right? I hit macro assign, and then I'm going to just go ahead and say, let's say I want this to be my analog filter, and this is going to go dark, right? And while I go dark, I'm also going to, it'll increase the pre-drive a bit more, and we'll also let it bring up a little bit of the envelope 2 amount, right? So now, and if I back that off, right? So I can just call that darken. Done. That's how fast it is to make a macro, right? Like it literally takes, I did misspell it. I put an S there instead of an A, but I can edit that. Look. So just to show you how fast and how accurate the screen is. All right. Boom. Done. Oh, I didn't save it. That's why. My bad. My bad.
That harkens back to the quick UI and having the really good speed.
And when you, I know it doesn't show up on yours, and I was going to try and demo it on mine as well, but the contrast isn't showing well on mine either. But that when you hold things down, if you hold down the init button, anything that you can init lights up. And if you hold down the random button, anything that you are allowed to randomize lights up. So you know exactly what functions you can perform. Or if you want to create associations in the mod matrix, if you press and hold down the oscillator 1 button, everything that is allowed for that thing to modulate lights up, either on the keyboard or on the panel or on the screen. So it makes it really easy to figure out, okay, what can I do from here? Because it shows you every time you just press it and hold it down.
Oh, there's a question in here about how does the desktop align with the Deluxe's spare space. It doesn't. Just to be real, like it's 19 inches wide, like a rack, because it can be rack mounted or it can be VESA mounted. Let me see if I can't pull it into view. I'm not sure if I can. Hold on. I have one right here, but it's on a VESA mount right now. And hold on, bear with me. Happens. Oh, you can almost see it. Hold on, we're almost there. Oh.
That leads me to a question. When you're doing beta testing of new versions of the firmware, are you reloading the firmware, or do you have more synths in the studio?
I mean, I have multiple, but generally speaking, when I'm beta testing, I'm on the latest beta and I'm testing it. So like, yeah, and honestly, loading firmware on this thing is way faster than a lot of other synthesizers. The protocol that we're using now is crazy fast.
I can actually show that, because that was one of the things I was going to talk about, is the ASM manager that was on Hydrasynth uses MIDI, where I believe this is actually USB. So if you could see, if I take all of this entire bank and I want to transfer it over to Leviasynth on the Hydrasynth, this would take maybe
time.
Yeah, it takes a while. But
especially on the Deluxe, it does take a little while with the Deluxe.
You can see this.
That's kind of restrictive because of the sort of memory that's inside of the Hydrasynth.
Right.
And it's a different memory status and all that stuff, and a different protocol and all that in Leviasynth.
And so you didn't see that it popped up on the wrong screen, but it took about 3 seconds to transfer all 128 patches across there.
Yeah, it's
really fast.
Yeah, the way it communicates is way faster now, so it's much easier to do your patch management and all that.
We do have a few things we need to talk about. First, Manny, you were in the middle of a lot when we interrupted you. So
well,
are
I'm
you
just talking
done
about
now?
The last part I was going to talk about is the algorithm morphing. Okay. Because of the power they've got in this synth engine now, okay, they have purely seamless morphing between the oscillator positions in the algorithmic arrangement, okay, meaning you don't have any clicks or glitches or anything as the oscillators are repatched from their prior position to their new position. And that's been, I don't want to say a holy grail, but it's been a desired near holy aperitif for people doing this in a long time. I mean, Yamaha went in a different direction with their Smart Morph, which is a morphing of parameter fields, more from machine learning things. But this is really cool, and what you can do with it is immense. And you want to talk about, how easy is this for somebody to program a sound? Some of the examples I've shown people about why algorithm morph is cool. Some of us old timers remember when you were playing with the DX7 or whatever, you would just do algorithm roulette to find out, if I just change the algorithm, does something cool happen? So one of the things that's really nice, because it's totally seamless on how they change from one to the other in Leviasynth, you can pull up a patch. You don't have to know anything about FM. You can sit there, scroll through the algorithms. If you hear a sound you like on one of them, just write down what number it is. Okay? Find whatever. Find 4 or 5 of them. Make those numbers. Now, go into the algorithm morph. Put those 5 in your positions, okay? Now, without knowing any FM programming, and I got 5 different timbres I'd like to have control over, or say I have a really bright, attacky sound that wants to turn into a pad, and I don't know how to do that, or don't want to learn how to do it, you can just algorithm morph it with an envelope. You don't even have to learn the programming.
Yeah, and I will say that is the morphing is like, man, it's such a there's so much to do there, and there's so much to experiment with there, that I feel like I haven't even come close to scratching the surface of that functionality, like as far as what you can actually pull off by doing that.
Yeah,
I've been like mentally programming it. Like I'd go to sleep and I'd be laying in bed like at least 30 minutes just going like, okay, if I take this parameter and I run it through here, maybe I can use this aspect of the voice mod, or I can take the step LFO going into that and then change the phase here, algomorph there. Now I can run 3 different sounds at the same time using these groups, and it's it's insane. Like, and then I go to actually program it and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And then I go through.
It's when you sleep and dream, and when you have to take choices in your dreams, that when those choices are about the parameters on the synth, then you're hooked.
Mm-hmm.
That's my life.
Yeah.
But the thing that ultimately I was so happy to see the algorithm morph is because it's a subset of my ultimate FM algorithm thing, which is I've always wanted to have an FM algorithm that all oscillators are always connected to every other oscillator, and every one of the oscillators has an enveloped input, okay, modulated by a controller amount and or mathematical function. Feedback is, of course, in that portion as well, and in my version of it, everything's always on, okay? So it's the burning sun of noise, and then you program it by putting all your restrictions on it.
It's FM subtractive synthesis.
Exactly, and then you can go anywhere you like, and this is actually, in a really interesting way, a version of that, which I just find very, very, very cool, because if you have your algorithm morph on a knob or with an envelope, you can obviously gang up other parameters of envelope depths, feedback, other modulations in there, that you can make this thing across a spectrum of positions here that do behaviors that you've never heard. Our job is to discover how to make those musically useful and palatable, because there's a lot of really interesting things that show up and will take your head off or blow your speakers if you're not paying attention. But it's cool that you have now that capability, which, you know, I've not seen anywhere. So I am very enthused about what the future holds in the engine. When you mix all that kind of stuff with the stereo stuff. I mean, let me give you one little quirk of it that's just really cool. When you choose the pulse width as a modulation format between 2 oscillators, okay, the Leviasynth is basically hard coding that piece of information there. You still will have changes in what it sounds like with the tuning ratios and stuff, but it's independent of your waveform, okay? However, when you use algorithm morph and you take that pulse width modulation oscillator, and you move it to a carrier position, it will blend into the actual waveform that you actually have set for it. So you can do some really unique things with that, because you can have one of those really interesting complex waves that Ken showed you in the library there, and you can morph out from using it to create a square wave pulse width modulation thing, but then you bring it into a parallel standpoint with a little bit of detune modulation, that you have 2 parallel things where you're just now mixing a square wave with some, you know, high harmonic content, harmonic overload wavetable thing. And then you can morph it all back and it does pulse width modulation again. You can't do anything like that in any other synth. Terribly deep stuff and so much fun. So I like algorithm morph.
Okay. I would like to to continue this conversation some other day, because now it's about time where I end the stream. So are you interested in continuing in another show?
My bad. I was
Yeah.
thinking about idea. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I was thinking about we need to do some more playing, some more editing and doing that live. So
I always, yeah, and for those of you not aware, I have a YouTube channel of my own. Obviously, ASM has its own channel, and we'll be doing some content over there. But I also have my own channel, and I do like live streams where I teach tips and tricks and just kind of mess around. And I'm not smart enough to do it on a schedule because honestly, like I never know when I'm in the mood or when I have time or whatever. So I just randomly go live.
Don't.
So
schedule
I would
it.
just say subscribe and like hit the bell so that you get notified when I go live if you're interested in that stuff. But yeah, it's usually like I try not to make them too crazy long, but yeah, like I've done a few where I just kind of talk about different tips and.
I learned a lot about the hydrosynth from your streams.
Oh, excellent.
I bought a hydrosynth the first time because I saw hey, look, we have a synthesizer that can do 300 oscillators.
Oh yeah,
and that's
it was like 10,000 or something. It was crazy.
yeah, you can do an insane level of oscillators on hydrosynth by using the wave stacking and all that good
phase
stuff.
diff and all that stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah. Okay, but then let's end it for today and continue the stream next time. I don't know the date yet. I think it will be in about 2 weeks' time, perhaps 3. But we'll see. Please stay when the stream ends, so we can have a small chat afterwards. And to all the chatters and viewers, thank you for being here. It has been a pleasure entertaining you, and I hope you learned something. I did. So
Yeah, learned a lot. Thanks.
yeah,
Good stuff.
yeah. And Andy and I have never been so quiet in a stream before.
I let the experts talk. I'm just a tourist, so. You know.
And thank you guys for all your help during development as well, and also Henrik, thank you for having us. And
Definitely.
you know,
Yeah,
it's
I actually
always
don't know.
appreciated.
Do I have to mark this as a promotion video, or what do
Well,
I?
you weren't paid.
I'm
or
not
anything,
earning
so I don't
anything.
think so.
So yeah,
I do-
maybe.
I let it be.
I do want to say one thing about you were talking about the tactile response and the easy of the layout menu elements and stuff like that. It reminded me a lot of the ESQ1 and SQ80 and
It's
TS10. It's really snappy and fast, and you know.
a lot of the layout was Glenn actually. I mean, he said this publicly many times. As he stole that idea from that Ensoniq.
Looks like it. It's,
Nope.
it's really
Wrong.
well done.
Matrix.
Wrong. No,
I've heard him
wrong.
tell-
Oh,
I've
the
heard him
Matrix?
say it.
No, the Matrix is
Yeah.
it was his bigger inspiration.
That's I remember him
Yeah.
saying that about the hydrosynth.
Because like I have my SQ80 here, and like I remember when I got my first prototype of the hydrosynth, I was like, Ensoniq, like because Ensoniq's actually was right up the road from where I live, and so like the ASR10 and ESQ and all that stuff is always on my mind, but that was like instantly, and he was like, no, like he was like I was referencing this, and then I was like, but look, and he was like, oh yeah, like. Yeah, so it was kind of interesting how similar they are in that way.
That was like when I asked him about the hydrosynth
I
looking
tell
like
you,
the.
if anybody out there ever sees like an SQ80, like I know they've got great VSTs for it now. I have them and I love them, but the SQ80 is like, it programs in a similar way because you have that module select button kind of thing, but it only has one slider instead of like 8 on there. But man, let me tell you, I love the SQ80.
Let's hold it
Sorry.
there.
Well, I need to get one last thing in because
Yeah.
I've been around a long time doing this stuff, and ASM did a phenomenal job in making the right call. They put together a stellar group of people working on it, both for the beta testing and sound design, the engineer core. They did such a great job. having the method by which we could communicate, do stuff, collaborate. It was very enjoyable, and so kudos to Glenn and the guys at ASM that set that all up. So really a good group, and glad to have been part of it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for being here, and to the chatters too, and viewers. And let's find the outro. It's right here. See you next time.
Thanks.